I'm Dan, and this is 10,000 Hours of Indie, a podcast exploring new music and delving deeper into what goes on in the background of the independent music industry. I'm a musician and passionate music lover, and I wanted to delve deeper into new music in the independent scene around the world. I also saw this as a chance to help artists connect and share their stories, so if there's someone you hear and you want to find out more about, every podcast has links in the show description. Get involved, help this community grow, follow on the 10,000 Hours of Indie socials, you can find all the links in the show description. And also feel free to email me about anything music related, 10,000indie@gmail.com. I'm open to any ideas and love listening to your promos. Emily Popli is a Chicago-based singer-songwriter who has been writing for over 2 decades. Starting out as a poet during her school years, she also took piano lessons and eventually grew into a songwriter. Having released 2 albums previously under her maiden name Henderson, she views the release of her latest album, Lilith Fair Kid, released at the end of August, as her debut, due to a more professional recording process. I'm really enjoying the album, which is genuinely great, soulful singer-songwriter pop, so I reached out. Hi, Emily. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you for your words. That was very sweet.
So when I first heard this album, I instantly sent a message to my wife and said, I found someone who has all the wonderful nuances of early Emily Sandé.
Oh, that really means a lot. Thank you. I mean, I have a lot of influences, and it means a lot to me that can be heard, I guess, in the music.
So maybe a good place to start is with your writing and musical influences. What are your sort of biggest influences in your music and what you do?
Well, really, the album is named Lilith Fair Kid because when I first showed all of these songs to my producer and a friend of his, Johnny Audible, and my producer's Brandon Williams, they were immediately like, this gal was really influenced by the women that performed at Lilith Fair. And I mean, they were right. Sarah McLachlan was a huge influence on my songwriting, I would say. I just think that how she writes songs really affected how I kind of learned to do that because I was listening to them in my formative years. And then Sheryl Crow also was a big one. I was just always so impressed that she always seemed to perform better live. And so I wanted to write songs that I didn't need special things to happen in the studio to make it what it is live. I write basically to be able to perform them as you hear them. Yeah, I think those women especially were huge influences on me, but I pick up influences from everywhere. I just love music. So
that's a good way to be. So your last full album release was 13 years ago. That's a lot of life to pour into one album.
Yeah. The last thing I released at all before this was a single that I joke that I kind of used to trick my husband into proposing to me. And that was in 2016. Generally, as a songwriter, I tend to want to write if I'm feeling a lot of like heavy emotions or something that really needs to be expressed. And we've been married almost 9 years now. And I think for a long time, I was kind of scared to release anything to the world, anything other than like everything's going great and like it's happy and stuff like that. And the pandemic happened. We had a couple of kids like during that time, and I would say postpartum depression and anxiety hit me pretty hard. And finally, it was just going to boil over if I didn't write something. So it was time.
I know that feeling. I can't write unless there's something bad happening. I can't write about positive experiences in a way. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But your process from having the initial spark of an idea to having a finished song?
I mean, it's kind of like a sneeze, I would say. It comes on pretty quickly. And then I don't really sit on songs for very long. I'm not the kind of songwriter who's got a book of like 300 almost finished ideas or things like that. It's like, if I'm feeling something, it just comes out very, very quickly. And I generally don't take longer than a day or so to finish it because I want to stay in that moment where I'm feeling it still. And I think that leads to more authentic lyrics, at least for me, because I just have a hard time reaching back into something I felt maybe months ago or something like that. So it's a very quick process, actually. I would say I come up with the lyrics first, but I hear a melody in my head while I'm writing it these days. So I'll finish that piece first, and then I'll sit at the piano and try to flesh out some chords. But that's kind of what that process looks like.
although it was a much longer process to do the recording, of course.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the production, I mean, there's so much that goes into production. This is the first time I've worked with a professional producer in Brandon Williams, and I really did not know how much goes into that process. I mean, he's a brilliant musician. He thinks about everything. He worked very closely with me about what these songs meant so that he could try to express that musically. And so that process alone took a very long time. The studio, getting what we needed. My voice changed, I would say, pretty dramatically during the process of it, because we got started and it was fine, but I knew I could do better. And in the process, I lost about like 20 pounds, and on purpose, not like from stress. Yeah, just finding the right voice I thought that could bring it to life took a while. But I mean, he's got brilliant musicians that I met and became friends with that were great. They didn't take very long to do their parts. Yeah.
So you mentioned Brandon Williams on your website. How much did he help you to craft the songs into what they are now from your original ideas?
Oh my goodness. I gave him kind of skeletal songs. What I did is I sent him like voice memos of a finished set of lyrics and some chords and maybe a loose idea of like a piano melody or something like that I was hearing. We became very, very good friends in the process of putting this out, because he would have long conversations with me about really what these songs mean and what I was feeling. And for The Guy Who Got Away, for example, I was like, I feel like I want a gospel choir for part of this. And he's like, yeah, we're in Detroit. Like we're better to find a gospel choir. So, I mean, he really listened to what I was thinking, but then again, he has so much more experience than me and was mentored by some wonderful producers. And so he just kind of knew how to bring what I was thinking to life in a real way. And so he had a huge influence on all of that.
And how about if you had to choose a favorite song from the album? Pick your favorite child.
I know, exactly. It honestly changes every time I listen to it. For today, I'm going to say Water Glass. That one that came up pretty quickly. And to be transparent, I just kind of needed my husband to know how much I loved him on a weekend that I was away. And that one just came out, and how it ended up being produced, I think just was beautifully done. So I really like listening to that one.
I have to say The Elephant is my favourite, because it was obviously I listen to things as an album, and not many people do that these days. I know.
Yeah.
When I listen to an album, I listen to it from start to finish, and I make sure, if possible, I don't take a break. But that sucked me in straight away. So for me, that was the one that made me sit up and listen.
That was actually the first one I sent Brandon. I didn't know he was a Grammy-nominated producer when I first met him. And so I just, somebody told me he was a producer, and I kind of very casually walked up to him. I was like, hey, would you produce some songs of mine? And he was like, I don't just work with anybody. So like, send me what you have. And so that was the first thing I sent him. And that was what made him say yes. So
I picked a good song then.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah.
What I noticed when listening to the album is that the last track stands out as being quite different from the rest of the album. It's almost got this ode to the 80s in it, sort of a George Michael-esque kind of thing going on.
Okay, so I put these 9 songs on the record because these were ones that I was feeling all kind of within the same span of time. That one, it is kind of the outlier for a couple of reasons, like content-wise, but also when I was writing the chords, it felt appropriate for the lyrics. But Brandon's the kind of producer where he's not going to force something into a square hole if it's a circle. So most of them came out kind of country, but that one we just could not and wouldn't make into a country song. So it just isn't. So yeah, it doesn't really fit genre-wise with the rest of the album, but it does in terms of it's part of my tapestry, I guess, last year. So but you're right. Yeah. It's a weird one for
It's just I have loads of new music queued up on a playlist, and I thought it had already moved on to the next track or the next album, next artist. I was like, oh, it's still the same album. So it was a nice surprise, but it was just, as I say, it didn't quite fit with what I was expecting it to be. But that's a good thing.
You're not the first person to tell me that either. So
the album cover, For anyone who hasn't seen it yet, it's a pencil drawing of you sitting in a red dress with an elephant behind you. I know the first track is called The Elephant, but is there a story behind the album cover?
That's based on a picture that Tyler Core, a photographer, took of me. But then when we were trying to find ideas for album art, I spoke to a friend of mine, Alyssa Segura, who is a graphic designer. And I know she's got a lot of heart and soul when she listens to things, and she really likes to connect her art to things like that. So I said, maybe let's include the picture because people don't really know who I am. But if you can just somehow inject something, maybe from what you heard from the album. And the elephant ended up being kind of like a big overarching theme because there are a lot of themes of depression in the album, and that's really what the elephant's about. And so
it's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. And on your chest and just everywhere. So she felt that was kind of a big theme, which she was right about, and ended up creating this beautiful drawing. And I mean, it was all her idea, like to have it holding my bra on its like tusks, and it just made so much sense when I looked at it. I was just like, yeah, it's always behind me. I don't know. If anything, it was just that kind of made everything make sense together.
How about feedback from the album? You've posted a lot of reviews and things on your Instagram. Have you got a favourite quote or remark about the album that really sort of pulled on the heartstrings when you read it so far?
I think it's one that Uranium Waves did. They started their review saying, like, picture a lighthouse assembled from old diaries and ticket stubs. And that's the aura of Emily Popli's debut, Lilith Fair Kid. They talk about my influences of like Sheryl Crow and Sarah McLachlan, but then like how it's become kind of my own. And I don't know, I just felt very seen by that because it really is like, it's a diary that everybody gets to listen to now, which is terrifying for me. But these people I had never met saw that, made it kind of real. Oh yeah, I'm just literally sharing all this personal stuff with everybody, and you can hear the influences I've had, but you can also hear that it's very much its own thing.
No, I think it's much harder to write about yourself than it is to write about situations outside of your own life.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to sharing them, because I always try to distance myself from my songs because it's safer and easier and more comfortable. But when you really let yourself go into the songs, it must be, well, very scary to see what people think about it.
Daniel, I think that's one of the reasons I'm not one of those songwriters with like a cache of 1 million songs that I could just release at any time, because I have a really hard time writing songs about nothing. I have to have like really gone through it in order to write or really complete a song. And I think that's why I haven't released anything in so long, because this stuff was really scary to talk about. And for me, somehow it's easier to write about those things, but it's harder to release, I would say.
I do always have a massive trawl through the people I'm interviewing on here. And I did have a listen to a few tracks from some earlier albums. I could only hope really stuck out as having a sort of Alanis Morissette angst thing going on for me.
Yeah, I was definitely a little angstier. I was maybe 19 when I wrote that, but wow. So you did do a deep dive, huh?
I do that. So also, when I prepare for interviews, the first thing I do is ask AI a few questions. Would it offend you to know that Gemini called you a veteran of the Chicago music scene?
Oh, I mean, not necessarily. I'll say this. I've been making my living as a musician in the Chicago area for maybe 15 or so years, but not necessarily as an original musician. I play at piano bars pretty regularly, and there's some kind of touristy places like the Redhead Piano Bar that I play at regularly and stuff like that. So in that sense, I would say I'm a veteran of that music scene, but I wouldn't say necessarily as an original artist, because it's been so long since I put anything out. It's amazing if people know that I did do that before this. So. Well,
and as you say in your own website, this is a vastly different album to the previous two you've put out as well.
Yeah, it is.
So on to social media. You mainly use Instagram and Facebook from what I can see. Tell us a little about your idea of One Take Tuesday.
I'll say it's mostly for me to just kind of keep my chops up as a musician in playing at piano bars and stuff every week. I take requests, and it's a way to kind of keep up with what people are listening to and what's popular and stuff like that. But oftentimes I get stuff that's off the beaten path. And so every week I take a song that I didn't know that got requested and I learn it. And without practicing it, half because I don't have time with the kids, but half just to get in the habit of learning things quickly and being able to do it at shows and stuff. I just give myself one chance at cranking it out. And it's really introduced me to a lot of music and a lot of artists that I wouldn't otherwise have heard maybe, but it also just kind of keeps me on my toes.
No, I like it. I actually, since following you on Instagram, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, I've been watching every Tuesday. So,
well, thank you for that.
You mentioned the piano bars. As an Englishman, I didn't have any idea these things existed until the episode of Friends where Monica and Phoebe went to see Mike's piano bar show. So yeah, what's it like? I mean, obviously, you must enjoy it because you make a living out of it and you're still involved in music. But, I mean, how do you switch between the mindset of earning music through playing other people's songs to focusing on your own stuff? There must be a sort of different mindset in there somewhere.
Oh, I mean, they're completely different. So in the Chicago scene, I play mostly at solo piano bars where it's just me and all the patrons and stuff. It's fun in that, like, I get to kind of inject my own, like, style and feeling into other songs, and it gives me an appreciation for other music. That's actually how I met all the musicians that played on my album, though. I went up to Detroit, and there's a piano bar where it's dueling, so there's 2 pianos on stage, and then we'll kind of fill in for each other on drums and bass and guitar. And I just thought they were incredible. And Brandon, actually, that's where I met him too. He was playing drums there at the time. It's a fun atmosphere because, especially when I get to play with other musicians, we kind of feed off of each other and make each other better. But aside from that, it's just kind of a fun way to make a living, I would say, because it's hard to make money, I guess, as a independent original artist. So I really do have to, like, switch into a different part of my brain if I'm going to start writing or be in the studio and stuff like that. One through line, I would say, though, is the performance aspect of it. I'm very, very silly on stage, and I just, like, have no fear or filter or anything like that. And I found that you really have to bring that into the studio or you can hear it. I think in some of my earlier recordings, you can probably tell a difference in the way I sing, because I tried to make it sound good when I was 19, but I didn't have the confidence yet as a performer. And to bring that into the studio, I think you need to properly express what you need to.
So how about your shows? Have you got any plans to play some shows to promote the album?
We do plan to do that. I think that's probably going to end up being after the new year, just to kind of give it time to breathe and honestly just to get stuff booked in a way that makes sense. But yeah, absolutely, that's in the plans. We feel really good about the music that we've put out and want to share it with as many people as possible. And I think touring is one of the best ways to do that. People get to know you and see you, and short answer, yes.
But obviously, now you're a mother, that's more difficult than it used to be.
Yes. I mean, ideally, I would love to take my kids to wherever. I think they're a little young for that now. The 5-year-old would say that she's ready to go, but she's a little precocious little kindergartner. But it is hard to find time and space to do that. And even just going up to Michigan for weekends, got to leave her with my in-laws, and both of them with my in-laws. They love them. It's great, but even that's tricky. So we will figure it out. It's important to me to show my 2 girls that if they do decide to become parents someday, that they don't have to, like, give up on their dreams. And so I keep telling myself that when I do have to leave. Yeah, they might miss me for a couple days, but I think they're going to look back on this and think it's kind of cool.
I think most of the parents I know that are musicians as well tend to plan the tours around just long weekends rather than doing sort of 2 weeks here and 2 weeks there. It changes the way you tour.
Yeah, and that's definitely helpful when you can plan around a school schedule, for example.
So the final question, what music are you listening to at the moment that people that listen to this podcast may not be aware of and should check out?
Do you know what? I was just introduced this weekend to King Princess, and I think it's just brilliant music. the production is cool, but then it's just so soulful and real. And I really connected with it immediately because I think it's similarly vulnerable that I was. It made me feel not so alone. So yeah, I loved listening to that. Girl Violence was a very cool track. I think 1950 was also just fun. So fun, maybe not be the right word, but like it's sonically fun, but lyrically thought-provoking and cool.
So for anyone wishing to find out more, you have a website, emilypoplymusic.com, and you use Instagram and Facebook. And I spotted a TikTok link on your website too.
Yes, I'll admit I'm kind of a dinosaur at technology. So I post on TikTok, but I'm not maybe as active as I should be. So maybe this will be the kick in the butt to do that. I post there every week.
Lilith Fair Kid, the self-released new album by Emily Popli, is available now on all streaming platforms. Thanks, Emily. It was great to have you on the podcast and to find out a bit more about your music and your album.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. This was fun.